Hello, fabulous friends and fans. Welcome to your Saturn special horoscope covering Saturn's move into the sign of Sagittarius at the very end of 2014 for the better part of the next 3 years. I am your astrologer, Nadiya Shah. Thank you for being here. Saturn moving into a new sign does suggest that all of us in some way are going to understand that our most important learning is going to come if we pay attention to the lessons that we are being called to, if we pay attention, if we act practical, and if we put in the time to gain tangible results. Saturn, ultimately, it is my belief, and a lot of astrologers out there do believe, that Saturn is reward. Saturn needn't be difficult. Even though he gets a pretty bad rap, Saturn is saying manifest and honor the fact that we are incarnated. Honor the physical plane. And this is going to be a big lesson for all of us in some way. Saturn, as he moves to the sign of Sagittarius, will be speaking with Jupiter and Neptune and Uranus as well. All of this does speak to this call to be honest with ourselves, to put in the time, and to practically manifest, to move beyond what might be a dream, even a pipe dream, and actually do the work so that we gain something very valuable in the process, self-respect, which is ultimately what Saturn is truly about. Now, I have created a special video to look at Saturn, how Saturn moving into Sagittarius is going to speak to us collectively. But this video is, of course, for your sign. I thank you so much for being here. And I thank all of you out there who've been requesting these videos for months. Thank you so much for your trust in my interpretation of the sky. It will be a great transit. I do believe that. And it will be a great move as Saturn moves through the sign of Sagittarius. Enjoy. Hello, fabulous Sagittarius. Thank you for being here. So here it is, the big moment. Saturn will enter your sign, and this is going to represent a turning point in your life. In fact, every Sag over the coming 3 years is going to have their moment when they look at the actuality of where they are and what they feel and what they believe and deal with it. Is what it comes down to, taking a very honest inventory of your life and what it is and where it is that maybe you haven't been completely honest with yourself, or where it is maybe that you've been in a little bit of a dream. This is your opportunity to understand that while you can manifest whatever you want, I'm very much of that belief, very much so. And I do believe that the fact that we are human, that's one of the great things about being human. One of the gifts of being human is that we can have a goal. We can decide, is it worth doing what needs to be done for this? And then actually do it and actually move ourselves in that direction. Absolutely. But there does come a time when you recognize that you've changed. Or there does come a time when you recognize that, if I stay on this path, it's not really being true to me. It's not really being true to a higher calling. And it's not really being in alignment with who it is ultimately that I am today. These are the types of questions that are going to be coming to the forefront for you in just about every area of life. Now, I will be honest with you. The first year and a half, 2 years of this next 3-year cycle doesn't look that as amazingly empowering as I would hope, okay? The last year is incredible. So 2017 and late 2016 is amazing. It is off the hook. That is when your honesty and your diligence and your persistence, you're asking yourself tough questions, you digging deep and releasing fears, especially over the summer of 2015. You do that work and you will find that the payoffs are big and beautiful and wonderful and find you just out of nowhere. The thing is, Saturn, anything that comes with Saturn is well earned. You've put in the time, you've put in your resources, you've been paying attention, you've been building skill, you genuinely are an expert. You get that clarity through actual practical experience, and you put in the diligence so that you can actually manifest and gain self-respect in the process. So that's what Saturn is about. And that's the process that you're going to be engaged in. And the payoffs are there, and the payoffs are big in the later part of this transit. So in the first part of the transit, Saturn will be having some tough conversations with Jupiter and with Neptune. There are a few different ways that this is going to play out for people, and especially when Saturn is moving through your sign. The really big lesson, I believe very, very much, that the huge lesson when Saturn moves through your sign is that you alone are responsible for your happiness. You alone have that responsibility. Now, what is it that you need to do to make that happen for yourself? And whatever it is that you need to do, whatever it is that you need to change, whatever work needs to be done internally or changes externally, it's about you recognizing that and actually doing it. It's about you recognizing that happiness which you seek is there, but it cannot be dependent on anything external. I do think that when Saturn moves through your sign, it does provide you with several moments that may not feel like revelations necessarily, but certainly will be important. Several moments when you come to realize that a lot of times, and I will say this, because with Sag, I think one of the higher spiritual lessons of your sign, and for you actually, is when you find yourself getting self-righteous or getting caught up and thinking that you know all the answers and, up on the sage stone, if you will, and find yourself, if even in your own head or just to a friend, sort of preaching about the wrongs in the world, and if only more people understood your views politically, then everything would change. And when you start getting like that, thinking you know all the answers where it comes to religion or politics, that is a sign to your spirit that you are not happy, that something is off. When you start really looking outside of yourself and thinking that externally things have to change, especially in this, huge kind of meta way, like these political views and situations, and these must change in order for you to be happy. Now, that doesn't mean that if you honestly believe that you are called to serve in politics or to serve towards social change, you shouldn't. Absolutely honor that. It is a very noble pursuit if that is what you're called to do. But I think it's a different thing than just having your opinions and getting caught up in them and making others the bad guy, the proverbial other, the bad guy. I'm reminded of a book called, I remember reading this as an undergrad, an essay called Strangers to Ourselves, or rather a book of essays called Strangers to Ourselves by Julia Kristeva. And in this book, Julia Kristeva says, essentially, she talks a lot about, through a series of essays, how we project those parts of ourselves that we reject onto others. So this is not uncommon. This is actually something that we see in Jung when he talks about the shadow and how we project the shadow as well. In Carl Jung's work. So she says how we take this, we use words like the foreigner or the other, however the other might be, and we project all these qualities onto them that we don't want to own are actually part of us. And that's a big lesson when Saturn moves through your sign, is to understand and to recognize where you're projecting, where it is that you're making other people the bad guy, because on a very deep and fundamental level, you are not happy with some circumstance in your life. And the only way that that's going to change is to change something within you first, to do the work, to shift your energy first so that your world can start to reflect that. And so it isn't necessarily that anything in the external world is going to change for you to be happy, but it is you that needs to change, you that needs to prioritize your happiness. So if you should find yourself sort of on that high horse or high stone, that's going to be a signal for you. And I do think that that's going to be the case, especially in the first year and a half, 2 years. This is one way, when you find yourself getting into that place, this is one way that the universe is going to call you, is going to try to get your attention to say, hey, look at this, look at what you're doing, so that you can then recognize what maybe you're projecting And where it is at the very root, there is something that needs your forgiveness. Now, I think that this idea of forgiveness so that you can move forward in at least one area of life, this is huge for everybody in the first period of this cycle. And forgiveness ultimately is a selfish act. And forgiveness really ultimately is about saying to yourself, okay, I'm going to let this go because it's getting in the way of me doing what I need to do so that I can be happy. And that's really it. Like, I'm ready to let that go. That's what it comes down to. And I think that's going to play an important part of the first part of this journey, certainly over the coming 3 years. When Saturn moves through your sign, it ultimately is about recognizing that we are incarnated for a reason. We're on the physical plane for a reason. And if you have been sort of caught up in any kind of dreams or fantasies or hopes without actually looking at the practical realities of what's required to manifest, that is when Saturn moving through your sign isn't always the easiest ride. But as I said, it actually can be really, really great. And Saturn does want you to experience rewards, but those rewards have to be earned. And those rewards have to be the kind that lead you to a place where you recognize that by sticking to a path and doing what's required, doing what's being called for, is where you gain that very, very precious quality of self-respect. It's going to come down to you and your happiness and, yes, doing the right thing, doing the ethical thing. You may be asked to sort of rise to the occasion of meeting greater responsibility. You may be asked to look very honestly at the things that you've been doing and pursuing and why you've been doing that, and where it is now that you're ready to let that go. You will be asked in at least one key way to grow up on a level of spirit and on a level of heart, on a level of understanding that a grown-up life doesn't have to be about letting go of a youthful exuberance. Far from it. You're at your very best when there's something that you are genuinely enthusiastic about. But it is about you understanding that by meeting responsibility, that's where you gain the greatest freedom. And that's what Saturn promises as well. This is the ancient ruler of the sign of freedom, Aquarius, as well. And so Saturn does promise a measure of freedom, but it's freedom that comes through responsibility, not from responsibility. Ask yourself those most pressing questions of happiness. When you find yourself getting caught up in energies that really get in the way of your happiness, you have to make a decision. Are you going to keep carrying it, or are you going to let it go? And if you choose to let it go, and if you choose to meet the responsibilities in front of you, if you choose to do those things that you know you have to do now at this point in your life, you are going to find that that diligence and that groundedness actually helps you plant some very powerful roots that allow you to grow that much stronger and that much taller and reap that much greater rewards in a very short period of time. Well, thank you so much for watching. It'll be a great Saturn moving through Sag. It'll be a great coming 3 years. Enjoy.